Good evening. Thank you all for joining us this evening for a virtual Reparations Commission meeting. It is May 28th. This is our May meeting. And we have quorum amongst the commissioners. But just for the public, I think it would be good for us to just introduce ourselves. Again, I am Kayla Reed, she, her. I serve as chair of the Reparations Commission. I pass it to you, Delisha.
I am Delisha George. I am secretary of the commission.
My name is Gwen Moore, and I am a member of the commission.
I'm William Foster, also a member of the commission.
My name is Kimberly Franks, member at large of the commission.
My name is David Cunningham. I'm a member of the commission as well.
Great, thank you. And we may later be joined by Reverend Anthony and Dr. Ross. So just as an overview of our agenda this evening, I don't think we're going to be before you long. We are just going to review the commission mandate and the executive order. Delisha, if you could lead us in that, that'd be great. Give some commission report status updates, see if there are any public comments, and then we will close. And we'll also announce future meetings this summer for folks to engage. Delisha, do you want to take us through the review of the mandate and executive order?
I'll read the Executive Order 75, establishing a community-driven commission to assess the history of slavery, segregation, and other race-based harms in the city of St. Louis. Explore the present-day manifestations of that history, and ultimately recommend a proposal to begin repairing the harms that have been inflicted.
Great, thank you. So just as a recap, we were charged with executing the mandate in the executive order in March. Last December, we sent a letter to Mayor Jones asking for a 6-month extension. We were granted that 6-month extension, which now means the report is due September 8th, 2024. And so I think it would be great if we could just spend a little time giving an update to the general public about where we are in the report, and just see if any of the commission members have any questions, since we are split into working groups, and then move to public comment if there are any. Can we start with the community engagement working group for updates?
I will share that there has been outreach to other commissions, coalitions, committees, since they're not all referenced as commissions or established as commissions. But across the US, there are different collectives that are working on reparations efforts. So the outreach has been made to them to get a summary of what those efforts look like, and if they have seen any results, what the engagement looks like, and hopefully we can include that in our report so that we're able to give an update for not only St. Louis, but other areas as well.
Great. Any other, Dr. Ross is here, but not.
I see his hand, but I don't see him on this.
Yeah, let's see if that helps. Dr. Ross, can you speak now?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I can't see, I didn't see my picture on the screen. But that's okay. So the update from the Health Committee.
Well, before you give an update, Dr. Ross, let me just explain to the public the other working group, and then I'll let you go first, okay?
Sure.
So in addition to the community engagement working group, there's a report working group. It is 3 of us on that working group, Dr. Ross, Professor Cunningham, and myself. As we mentioned in previous meetings, we have decided that the bulk of the report, we are really aiming to draft about 100-page report that focuses on the history of enslavement, that gives some executive summary, that ties in the recommendations, but really shaping the bulk of the report to focus in on 6 areas. Those areas are housing, neighborhood and built environment, education, public health, jobs in the economy, and state violence and policing. Dr. Ross, Professor Cunningham, and I have split those those sections. So each of us carries or anchors 2 of those sections of the report. In March, we spent most of March really inviting area experts and community leaders who are working in these areas, specifically in St. Louis, or have sort of written about St. Louis and engaging these topics to be contributors to the report. In total, we've invited about 20 folks, broken across those 6 area focuses. Most of them have said yes, and we held a meeting in April to give an overview and answer any questions of the potential contributors, and spending most of May and June in writing mode. And so I anchor housing, neighborhood and built environment. Dr. Ross anchors education and public health, and Professor Cunningham anchors jobs in the economy and state violence and policing. So Dr. Ross, you can go ahead and give the update on your 2 issue areas.
Sure, thanks. So we've had one meeting, and I was trying to get the members of the committee. Give me a minute here. So Dr. Maddie Haswawa Davis, who's director of the City of St. Louis Public Health, Daryl Hudson, who's a professor at the Brown School, Washington University School of Medicine, Sydney Watson, who's a professor of health law at St. Louis University, and I'm forgetting one other person. I guess, I'm sorry, Elizabeth Chiarello. Gosh, I'm forgetting her title. So we.
Sorry, just to say, she's a professor of sociology at SLU.
Okay, thank you, David. So we met, and essentially we concluded that we have a lot of work already completed. I had submitted a kind of a pre-meeting summary to the group, and they agreed to endorse that. Dr. Davis actually is now reviewing that and will append some significant data. We'll have the 5-page report, and of course, we will have an extensive 5-page note afterwards, really outlining some of the data that supports that report. And Dr. Davis has agreed to provide that data. We will be meeting every 2 weeks. The next meeting is actually, I think, hold on one second. It's actually, if I'm correct, we're meeting Monday, June 3rd at 2 p.m. Zoom meeting. And we'll compile more information, and we are scheduled to have that completed report by the end of June.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Ross. David, do you want to give an update on your 2 working groups?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I think both of the groups are well in process at this point. The group on jobs and economy is comprised of Jake Rosenfeld, who's a professor of sociology at WashU, Adia Harvey Wingfield, who's also a professor of sociology at WashU, and Ifeanyi Ukpabi, who's a postdoctoral fellow at UMSL. And we've met together as a group. I've had individual conversations with each of the members around details and roles in terms of the group. And we're now at a point, or I should say they're now at a point, as I've just been overseeing this, where we have an initial draft that's been circulated. It's intentionally, there are kind of call outs and gaps in that draft, but the other members of the group are kind of claiming particular areas that still need to be worked on. Dr. Ukpabi is a really important addition because he's done a lot of work that is data heavy around St. Louis in particular. And so that will complement Professors Rosenfeld and Wingfield, who do a lot of important research in this area, but don't necessarily focus on St. Louis in particular. And so I think that will all be coming together quite well over the next 2 to 3 weeks. And the group on state violence also is in process. The main people who have taken the lead working so far have been Dr. Andrea Boyles, who is from St. Louis and is now a professor of sociology at Tulane University in New Orleans, but still has very close connections to St. Louis, has written a book about St. Louis that came out, about the Ferguson Uprising that came out, I think 3 years ago at this point. And Dr. Ashley Jackson, who also has spent a lot of time and work in St. Louis, has a PhD from WashU, is now a professor at Rutgers. They have been working on the sections on policing and incarceration in the criminal legal system in St. Louis. We also have considerable support from Arch City Defenders. Blake Strode was originally going to be a full member of the working group. Due to his schedule, it's difficult for him to play a full role, but has kind of pledged the support of various resources and data that Arch City Defenders has on hand. And we expect to use that to kind of augment the work of our working group. And I'm going to play, I think, a more active role in terms, alongside Drs. Jackson and Boyles, in terms of the writing of the section as well. And we expect, again, to have a draft available for sharing out to the commission and then to the broader public starting in mid-June, I believe.
Great, thank you, David. And then just to give an update on housing and neighborhood and built environment, both working groups have met once, and we have it in our notes to have another meeting in early June. These two working groups actually meet together because there is a lot of intersection between the housing and neighborhood and built environment, but we want to make sure that we're sort of using the two sections to tell unique stories while also understanding that a lot of the report is going to point to other parts of the report. So the neighborhood and built environment working group is Walter Johnson, who is a professor at Harvard University and wrote, many of us are familiar, he wrote The Broken Heart of America, which focuses on St. Louis. Jeff Ward is a professor at Washington University, and Patty Hayda is also a professor at Washington University. And so that working group has, in their conversation, thought about sort of like sharing episodic moments and times where there are like examples of abandonments, divestment, and removal. So thinking about neighborhoods like Mill Creek Valley, Deep Morgan, Chestnut Hill, and also sort of sites of erasure and removal like City Hospital #2, Homer G. Phillips. Thinking about how things like the Team 4 plan impacted neighborhoods like Jeff Vanderloo, all the way to more current realities like with the NGA. And so we're thinking about how that sort of the spatial and present day manifestation of those sites and that integrated history impact things like transportation, schooling, access to healthy food, vacancies, health, and housing security. We are registering questions around how to both talk about the private sector as one of the driving forces of this conversation, and also public policy that has ushered in some of these sites of removal, and thinking about the periods of time that we need to identify examples in, like the 1980s and 1990s. And so we have an outline and hoping to have a draft very soon. The housing team is comprised of Colin Gordon, who is a professor at the University of Iowa, Elizabeth Corver Glenn, who is at WashU, and Carol Camp Yaki, also at WashU. And they have actually drafted the first version of the housing section of the report, and are in edit mode to take feedback to produce the second draft in June. And so, yeah, so that, and then David, have you had a chance to check in about the enslavement section of the report? Because I have not.
I have had one additional conversation with Kelly Schmidt, who's at WashU and is one of the people. She's the associate director of the WashU and Slavery Project. Although I don't have a current handle on exactly where that is, I'm hoping also to circle back with Professor Jeff Ward, who I know you mentioned as part of one of your working groups too, who directs WashU and Slavery, and I'm hoping that the two of them will have more of an update for us soon, but I don't have the latest on that right now.
Got it. So in total, we're actually, between the three of us, sort of anchoring 7 sections of written
So,
materials.
excuse me, Kayla, I forgot to tell you, include my comments about the Education Committee.
Oh yeah, go ahead, please.
So please forgive me. So the Education Committee, they're the ones, I was also mistaken. We're going to meet on June 3rd. The Health Committee is going to meet 2 weeks after that, so please forgive that error. The Education meeting will have their first meeting June 3rd. That consists of Joseph Nichols, Cameron Anglin, and Michelle Purdy, who are both at St. Louis University, and Michelle Purdy, who's at Washington University. And we're going to really be guided by a report from Dr. Anglin entitled Separate and Unequal in St. Louis, Strengths and Limitations of School Level Funding Data, who's going to talk about the, well, just that issue, the funding of public schools and the consequent disparity in outcomes due to that funding. That there are going to be other aspects of it, but that was one report that's motivated us to start. So that first meeting is June 3rd, and since it'll be at the first meeting, I can't tell you when we'll complete that study, but all members are equally excited and animated, and I think that we'll move expeditiously also.
Great. Thank you. So, like I was saying, there are 7 sections that we are anchoring between the 3 of us on the report working group, trying to get drafts of those by late June, that is our hope, right? And I'm crossing my fingers there. The overall sort of report itself requires, once we sort of get these histories down, we also then need to convene the commission to be thinking about recommendations. So it is at the point of we're in these working groups, and we'll sort of come back together to read the sections that as they've been written, and then start to ideate around what recommendations we will make attached to each issue that we're covering. And then there's some sort of, wraparound writing that some of us will do to introduce the report. We have a choral fellow, Rosa, who helped sort of summarize the commission's work to date that will be included in the report. So we have a series of authors who are sort of piecemealing together the fuller report. And Dr. Ross, David, and I try to meet weekly on Wednesdays to just track. But right now, because we're in this sort of writing, we haven't had a meeting in a couple of weeks just for life. It's for many reasons. And but are anchoring our sections as needed. So just want to see if any commissioners have any questions for either working group, and we'll try to answer to the best of our ability. Go ahead, Delisha.
Yeah, so you answered partly one of my questions, which is when will we start making the recommendations? But not only when will we make the recommendations, we have to determine the who, the why. And so I was just wondering when we will get started on that, as far as even trying to determine that piece. And a second question I have was, you all keep saying that the report will be 100 pages roughly. And I'm just wondering if that is, given what you all have compiled so far and learned, is that where we are intending to land? Because that sounds like a lot, given that other reports have been done in the not too far past, right? We've had some recent reports. And so I'm just wondering if we are repeating some of the things that are in other reports, and if we could bring that down a little bit as far as the 100 pages of it, just thinking about, we expect people to read it. We don't want people to not read it, but we also don't want them to read the same thing. So I'm just wondering if the focus is on making sure that it's different information that's being offered in this report, for that reason, since we've had a number of reports in the region.
Yeah, so to the second question, what we talked about as a full commission was that sort of 100 pages is the max amount of pages that we're hoping for. We don't have, and in part because we've sort of articulated that each of the area focuses will have a few parts. So it'll have sort of history on the issue. We want to integrate personal narrative and tests that we've transcribed.
Kayla froze. Well, so my response, my, okay.
Issue-specific recommendations, and then sources sources for further learning. And so we are hoping to cite other reports and not like reproduce entire sections of the reports in our report, understanding, that we are telling a historical arc of information. So all of this is available somewhere, right? But that the narrative and the way that it's crafted is uniquely taking from those different things, and also providing space for additional learning to the public. I just by virtue of how many sections there are, I don't think we're going to get dramatically less pages than 100. But we, I think that's just sort of a guiding light for us to not create a very dense, inaccessible report, as which is what we are hoping doesn't happen. So even the part of breaking it down by section is that if folks are curious to just sort of think about housing, or if they're curious about education, that there's a total narrative there versus having to read the entire report. And then I'll just speak to the other parts of the report that we talked about. The report has to talk about the charge as is written. We want to spend some time defining like what reparations is, how the commission has sort of taken on theorizing about it, with being a local commission in the context of a greater conversation on reparations. We want to have some composition that acknowledges the contributors to the report, that includes the timeline of the commission, summary of the public meetings, and then actually move into those 7 sections. And so just to accomplish that, if you even just think about each of those other sections being 2 to 3 pages each, it still puts us, well above 70 pages. Just thinking about each of the major sections being a maximum of 10 pages and there being like 7 sections that we're anchoring around that. So I don't think we're going to get it much lower than 100, but we didn't want to have, a 300-page report. David or Dr. Ross, did you want to add on anything to that?
Not too much to
Um,
add to that report. I just think that we're going to be St. Louis, as St. Louis specific and a St. Louis focus as possible. That will certainly reduce redundancy. So we're going to provide that St. Louis perspective, which you won't see in any of these other reports, of course. And I would just echo what Kayla just said. So I think that the 100 pages or less will be more than sufficient to provide the information we need without the redundancy.
Yeah, I would echo that as well, and say I put in the chat the 2-page report outline that really overlaps very heavily with how Kayla walked through our sections. This is something we've been sharing with our working groups, so they would have a sense of how their particular sections would fit in with the whole, and is, sort of when we add up all those sections, as Kayla was just describing, it brings us up in the ballpark of that 100 pages. The other thing that might be partially a question too is, and I think this overlaps with Dr. Ross's point about this being specific, St. Louis specific, and really trying to bring the voices of those impacted in St. Louis to the fore in the report, is that we have tried to earmark within each of our 6 sections space to bring in testimony, in effect, from people in the community who've been impacted by each of these issues. And we've been culling, as part of that, what people have provided in public testimony in our public meetings. And the question I was just going to ask is, do we have any other, through the engagement working group or otherwise, any other oral historical components that might be able to supplement what we've gotten through our public meetings? Is that something that we might be able to do or think about in a variety of ways?
Before you go on, unfortunately, I have to leave in 2 minutes. I was trying to make that announcement before we started, but I couldn't get on. So I do apologize. I'll have to leave and hopefully I'll be debriefed later this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ross.
Dr. Cunningham, to your point of the public input, that is the thought was to get it from the previous meetings that we've had, where we have had so many stand up, but also in reaching out individually. So I believe that is taking place within our group. Reverend Anthony had a few in mind that he shared with us. And then that's also for me where I shared the outreach to the other commissions, coalitions, and so forth, to get that piece as well of what they're doing in other regions, to add that too.
Great, thank you. That sounds excellent. And just to say that when we've been thinking about the scale of the report, we've been trying to make sure that we hold space for those kinds of components as well, and not just have it be kind of more of a detached or general research report, but also to have a lot of space for these voices.
And using my I voice, that was my thought, that a good chunk of the report would be narrative. And so that's also why I was asking about the pages and what we were capturing in the report, so that it wasn't so like data heavy, but that it actually has the personal stories.
Yeah, so each section has of inside of the 10 pages, the sort of work of the contributors, as we are calling them, is to max out at 5 pages. So the summary is like half of the section, and then personal narrative testimonies takes up another 2 to 3 pages. And then the recommendations take up a page or 2, and then sources for further learning. So if folks are like, you hinted, for example, on the closure of Homer G. Phillips, but for further reading on that, you can go here. and our goal, I think we'll have hopefully an update on budget in the coming weeks. We've been working diligently to have conversations with the administration and other partners around that, to create space to think about like how this lives on the website, how those oral histories are captured, and how they connect to the recommendations of the report. And Delisha, you asked another question the first question you asked, I don't think we answered.
When we would start
When we
making the
talk about the
recommendations.
Yeah, so I think what we want to do is have the history and narrative portions written so that the full commission can have access to them, and then start to respond with recommendations that we've both heard in public meetings. So the transcription of those requests from the public, and then also relying on some of the experts to help lean into that conversation. But then, the commission starting to think about how we want to shape them. So I'm assuming that that'll start, we'll have some clear pictures of these sections by our June meeting. So that we're spending, late June through July thinking through the recommendations, as the rest of the report is being drafted.
And I have a question. The report is due in September.
Is that just me, or is she glitching for everybody?
Miss Gwen froze.
Yeah, Ms. Gwen.
There you are, Miss Gwen.
Could you
Am
repeat?
I still? Oh, no, I was asking about the final report. The final report is due.
September 8th.
There'll be an opportunity for the public to review it before it's finalized.
I think we have an in-person meeting scheduled. Delisha, can you remind me when that meeting is?
The September meeting or for August?
Is there in-person in August?
We are scheduling July and September as in-person.
Okay.
So that the initial conversation was that the July meeting would be the draft share for community, and that we would have that in person. So I guess we would talk through that and also share a draft of recommendations at that point. And then September to close out would be in person.
Yeah, so I mean, we are pushing to have the sections done before the June meeting. And I think everyone's on course for that, or at least drafts of those. So yeah, we can start to distribute those to the fuller commission. And then really think about the June meeting, and between June and July's meeting, to really be thinking about recommendations, that proposed recommendations, so that the July meeting is actually, the community is able to respond to what the point that we are at. I don't know if we'll have a full draft of the entire report by July, but we can focus in on the issue areas and the recommendations in that July meeting. So I think, Dr. Ross, David, and I can start to lead on figuring out what that'll look like, since we're delivering the sort of historical aspects of the report.
I do have another question.
Mhm.
Professor Cunningham, I don't know if I heard you correctly, but did you say some of the narrative is going to be pulled from the series of public meetings that we've had where people did make comments? Because we were thinking about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, we were thinking about that too, and we wanted to defer to your group if you had ideas about how to organize that or how to incorporate it with other things. We have not been actively trying to compile that, but we were given excerpts from certain transcripts for meetings that I think maybe it was some folks at UMSL had worked on that. And so we do have some compilations of comments, but we haven't seen as our primary purview to be like curating those, let's say, or compiling those in a particular way, absent consulting with you all. But yeah, we certainly wanted to value that testimony and make sure it's incorporated in some way. But again, kind of on the advisement and the work that your group is doing, we'd hope to align with that.
Yeah, so I think it would be great if the community engagement group is thinking about organizing the public comments around those issues. So if there are particular stories that are connected to housing, that we siphon those off so that when we're shaping the total report, we have those testimonies to either, integrate into the narrative or sort of in the narrative, and then have stories from the public or, whatever we call that section. But we really see you all owning those pages of each section.
And did you mention that you had transcriptions?
Yeah, we all should have access to so I don't remember which department, but they went ahead and transcribed every public meeting we've had. So we can, if you don't have access to it, we can get you access to it, Ms. Gwen.
Yeah, it was sent to us through email.
And we can bump it to the top of everybody's inbox. Any other questions for either working group from the commission?
I have a question around budget.
Mhm.
That we're still trying to acquire a budget of some sort, but you said, can you just, I'm sorry, repeat for the budget part, what exactly and how much do we know that we're trying to secure? And what are we wanting to use the funds for?
Yeah, so we have been approached by a private foundation, and they inquired about what support the commission needs. So we had a call, and we decided that next steps would be to engage the administration around what a public-private relationship around funding for the commission could look like. That call is in early June. And so I think on the other side of that call, I'll just have more to share.
I have another question. I know during the course of our meetings, we've had a lot of people do presentations. Is there any thought about how that information will be incorporated, or even not, if not incorporated, appended to this report? Because I think it was some very powerful presentations that we had, and that people were very engaged with them.
Yeah, so if I'm not mistaken, the transcriptions also include the presentations that were given in the public meetings, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's correct, right, Delisha? So
Yes, those were part of the transcriptions.
okay.
And
So
now,
we
and
have-
the video would be the collection of videos on the YouTube channel on the city's website. So the actual video of the presentations, but the transcripts are within the transcripts.
Yeah, so we have like your presentation transcribed, and we've also been able to capture most of the presenters as contributors to the report. So, and I think we're actually outside of you, like you, Dr. Ross, David, after the commission members gave presentations, the other presenters have come on as contributors to the report in written form. So I think that we're hoping to have some overlap there as well.
Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions from the commission? Okay. Well, at this time, we just like to open it up to any of the folks on the Zoom. If you have public comment that you would like us to hear, please just raise your hand and then we'll add you as a speaker. Okay, I see last name Gaines has raised their hand, so I'm going to add you to speak. And if you could just introduce yourself, let us know where you live and then your comments.
Mic check.
Yep, we can hear you.
Hey, peace to the task force. Shout out to all my beautiful Black people. I'm calling in from Brooklyn, New York, but I was born in Chicago and raised in California. I've actually been on a lot of social media apps having conversations with our community about reparations. And just to keep it very specific, first, I appreciate whoever is saying that they're going to keep the task force report page numbers as low as possible for digestion by the larger community. The California Reparations Task Force report is 1,100 pages. So we've had to have a lot of different meetings just chapter for chapter, but it speaks to how comprehensive our harm was and how comprehensive our healing is going to need to be as well. What I wanted to bring to this conversation was just, I'm sure you guys already know this, but preaching to the choir, the University of St. Louis, the descendants who helped to build that university are speaking about 360 million, but have also attached an interest rate to that amount, which is ballooned the number into the billions. And ultimately, I just wanted to bring to our attention that multiple different reparations task force are not just talking about cash payments being a one-time payout, but lifetime figures. The Oregon bill, Senate Bill 619 is the example I was hoping to pass to anyone who would be able to, or who is researching other suggested demands for reparations and who wants to look at that, because it also mentions our reparations being tax-free. But again, I just applaud you guys for fighting for this and thank you. And I got this link from someone who's a local as well, so I appreciate them for sending me this link. And thank you guys for your work again.
Thank you. Any other public comments this evening? Okay, I see that there are none. So just want to, end our meeting how we always end, just closing remarks with the remaining commission members. Anything you want to lift up or speak to about the conversation today, and then we'll land in announcements for the next meeting. Kimberly, can we start with you if you have any closing remarks?
Sure, I just want to express my appreciation for everyone who's joined us this evening, including people who jumped in on Zoom tonight. So I know we've had different locations, and so your continued engagement is valued and appreciated. And also just want to express my appreciation for those who have jumped in and helped the commissioners with the working groups. So look forward to next steps over the next few months.
Great. Thank you. William?
Yes, definitely want to thank everyone for joining. Those both local and from neighboring locations. I'm excited for the progress that we've made so far. I'm looking forward to kind of winding down the report and kind of coming up with the recommendations as we discussed. And as far as the communications piece, we look forward to making more progress there and gaining more insight into those stories that have been shared so far. But that's all for me.
Ms. Gwen?
Oh, yeah, I want to thank everyone who's in attendance. I want to thank, it seems like this has been a long process, but it's gone so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's been a lot accomplished. I've really been really pleased to see the amount of community engagement. that we've had at these meetings and people sharing their stories. And I think it's been very powerful. And of course, I want to thank our chair, our co-chair, our secretary, and our other commission members, commissioners who have been so diligent and so committed to this process.
Thank you. Professor Cunningham?
Yes, I'd like to echo appreciation for everybody on the screen, certainly, and everyone who's patched in to the meeting tonight. And, you know, as Ms. Moore is saying, I think the public engagement that we've had at our meetings up till now has been really pivotal to our work. I also think it's been really heartening to see our working groups come together, as Kayla's been talking about it. It's as she said, almost everyone we asked to be part of this accepted the invitation. There's a lot of commitment on that end. I think that work is going to be really important. And again, I think that really is the undergirding of things, that really the heart of the report and of our work is really about the people whose voices are really going to be at the center of this. And so I hope these things and expect that these things will align together well and really inform a robust set of recommendations that we can offer to the mayor and to the public. And so just want to express my appreciation for the way in which all of those pieces have been coming together so far.
Awesome. Delisha?
I echo the sentiments of appreciation for the engagement, for the support, for the understanding that this is not, while, you know, as Commissioner Moore said, this has been a lengthy process, but then it's gone fast, but it's also been challenging at times. And so I appreciate the understanding as we work to get this report with very informed recommendations to the mayor and the board of aldermen and the city of St. Louis.
Yeah. Yeah, I would just echo what all the commission members have said thus far. With the extension, it really is our priority to be contributing and drafting a report that responds to the realities that our families and communities have faced over the decades in St. Louis. I am very heartened by the local experts, the professors, the nonprofit leaders, the analysts who are contributing to the report working group at invitation. It is incredibly hard to do our day jobs and also organize entire sections of reports with very busy people, but everyone is putting their best foot forward so that we can meet this deadline in September and bring forth something that meaningfully contributes to the conversation on reparations from a local lens. And I just am grateful for the continued engagement to the public, and we do just look forward to our June virtual meeting and our July in-person meeting to really be able to show the public the progress that we are making inside of these working groups to deliver this report in September. So with that, I just want to pass it to Delisha to give dates for our next meeting, and then we will close.
Okay, so for June, we have 2 meetings. We have our planning meeting, which is scheduled for June 12th. We have our regular monthly meeting, which is what we're currently having. We have that for June 24th. Both of those meetings will be virtual. For July, we have July 10th, which is our virtual planning meeting, but our in-person July meeting will be July 22nd. All of our meetings start at 6 p.m.
Great. Thank you so much for that. With that, I'll take a motion to close and we will end the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Great. It's been moved and seconded. We just again want to thank the public for engaging us on this Tuesday evening and look forward to seeing you at the next meeting. Thank you all so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.